Section 4.4 Interactive Assignment Objective 3. Could it be that smoking actually increases survival rates among women? The accompanying data represent the 20-year survival status and smoking status of 1,330 women who participated in a 20-year cohort study. We're going to complete parts A through E. So here, I clicked on the icon to view the table. So here is our table. So we have the smoking status, where we have smoker, which is S, non-smoker, and S. Those are our columns. And then our two rows are dead and then alive. And then below that is going to be the age group. Okay, and then we're going to see a little bit more there where it says, here's the age group, dead, alive, smoking, non-smoking, for that age group, and so on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this particular table first. And so the question says, what proportion of the smokers were dead after 20 years? And what proportion of the non-smokers were dead after 20 years? And what does this imply about the health consequences of smoking? So we're going to use this table first. Okay, well, the first thing we need to do is we need to find the total for the column of smokers. So we're going to find the total of that. So what do we need to do is we need to add the following. We're going to take 140, add 450 to give us a total of 590. Okay, likewise for non-smokers, we're going to add 235 that represented dead, 505 that represented alive, and that gave us 740. Okay, and let me just change the total highlight so we know that we can separate the two. Okay, so we know that the total here is 590. And then over here we have 235, 505. That gives us a total of 740. Okay, now we're going to add up the rows. So when we add up the rows, we're going to take 140 and add 235. And that gives us a total of 375. And then we're going to take 450 and add 505 to give us a total of 955. So we need those totals to answer the following question. So the question was asking us, okay, the proportion of the smokers who were dead after 20 years is the following. So what we want to do is we're going to take the numerator, which is 140. 140 represents the smokers who were dead after 20 years. So let's take a look at that here. We have the smokers that were dead gives us a value of 140, and then we're dividing it by the total of 590, and so therefore that's going to give us the following proportion. It's going to give us 0.2372. Okay? And now what we want to do in the next question is we want to find out the proportion of non-smokers who were dead after 20 years is. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're looking for non-smokers. So the non-smokers who were dead is the following. It is 235 for the numerator. So we know that represents 235. We're dividing it by the total of non-smokers, which is 740 in that column. And then we get the following result, 0.3175. Now let's go ahead and then round each result to 3 decimal places. So this is going to give us 0.237, and again that represents the proportion of smokers who were dead after 20 years, and then the proportion of the non-smokers who were dead after 20 years, rounded to 3 decimal places, is 0.318. So let's go ahead and put our answer in here. So we have 0.237, which was what we got for the first one, and then 0.318 for the second one. Okay, now what does this imply about the health consequences of smoking? Well, this tells us that this implies that it is healthier to smoke according to this information it's given. Now, the data in the first table do not take into account a variable that is strongly related to survival status, which is age. The data shown in the second accompanying data table gives the survival status of women and their age at the beginning of the study. So, for example, okay, I'm going to open this up. We're going to take a look at that second table. Okay, and what it's saying here is that, for example, 14 women who were 35 to 44. So here, 35 to 44, there is 14 women. And that means that there were 14 women at the beginning of the study who were smokers and dead after 20 years. And so what we want to do is we want to determine the proportion of 18 to 20-year-old smokers who were dead after 20 years. So we're going to have to use this table. Okay, so in order to use this table, we're going to have to generate a total of each particular column. So if we look at the total for smokers for 18 to 24, then we're going to see that 3 plus 54 gives us 57. Okay, for non-smokers, it's 2 plus 61, which is 63. Okay, and so likewise, we're going to do the same thing as we continue. So 3 plus 54 gives us our 57. 2 plus 61 gives us 63. Likewise, 3 plus 121 gives us 124. And let's do the same with all of them here, so we can fill out the table. So 5 plus 152 gives us 157. 14 plus 97 gives us 111. 8 plus 114 gives us 122. 27 plus 106 gives us 133. 12 plus 66 gives us 78. 51 plus 64 gives us 115. 40 plus 83 gives us 123. 29 plus 8 gives us 37. 102 plus 29 gives us 131. 13 plus 0 gives us 13. And 66 plus 0 gives us 66. Now again, these represent the totals, 57, 63, and so on. These represent our totals of our values. Okay, now in the question, the question is asking the following. It's saying the proportion of 18 to 20-year-old smokers who were dead after 20 years is. Okay, so we want to figure out the proportion of 18 to 20-year-old smokers who were dead after 20 years. So let's take a look at that value here. Okay, so we're looking at 18 to 24 of the smokers who were dead. And that number gives us 3. So 3 is going to represent the number in the numerator. Okay? And then we got to divide it by the total in that column, which is 57. So 3 divided by 57 gives us a decimal of 0.0526. Okay, the next question says, what is the proportion of 18 to 24-year-old non-smokers, NS here, who were dead after 20 years? So that means we're looking at 18 to 24-year-olds, in this case, who were dead, and therefore we can see that that value gives us a numerator of 2. So the numerator is 2, and we're dividing it by the total of the non-smokers in that column, which is 63. So therefore, 2 divided by 63 is going to give us the following, 0.0317. So now what we're going to do is we're going to round both of those to 3 decimal places. So this gives us 0.053, and this gives us 0.032. So let's go ahead and answer those questions. So the proportion of 18 to 24-year-old smokers who are dead after 20 years is 0.053. And the proportion of 18 to 24-year-old smokers who were dead after 20 years is 0.032. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat part B for the remaining age groups to create a conditional distribution of survival status by smoking status for each group. So that means we're going to go ahead and solve each individual one here. So what that means is we're going to take each value, okay, using the age group that we have from our table above here. So let's go ahead and kind of bring this down a little bit more so we can see this as we make our calculation. Okay, so for smokers and non-smokers of 18 to 24. Okay, well, we already have those values. We saw that 3 divided by 57. So we saw that 3 divided by 57 gave us 0.0526. Okay, and then we saw that 2 divided by 63 gives us 0.0317. And again, that's for the age group of 18 to 24. Okay, next, now we're going to look at the age group of 25 to 34. So if we notice, the number of smokers that were dead for the age of 25 to 34 was 3. So we're taking 3 and then we're dividing it by the total of 124 to give us 0.0241. Okay, next, what we're doing is now for that age group, we're going to take the total of 5 of the non-smokers who were dead, and we're going to divide it for the total in that column, which is 157. So 5 divided by 157 gives us 0.0318. Okay, next, now we're looking at the age group of 35 to 44. So how many smokers who are dead for that age group? Well, we can see that there are 14. So 14 is going to be in the numerator, and we're dividing it by the total in that column, which is 111. So 14 divided by 111 gives us 0.1261. Okay, next, we're now going to find out what are the non-smokers of that age group that are dead, and we can see that that represents the number 8. So we're going to take that value of 8 and then divide it by the total in that column, which is 122, and that gives us 0.0655. Okay, let's take a look at the next age group. Next age group is 45 to 54, and we can see that the smokers who are dead for that age group is 27. And then we're going to divide it by the total in that column, which is 133, to give us 0.2030. And now we're going to look at the age group of 45 to 54 that are non-smokers that are dead, which is 12. So that means we're going to take 12 and then divide it by the total in that column, which is 78, which gives us 0.1538. Okay, let's take a look at the next age group, which is 55 to 64. Okay, the smokers that are dead in that age group is 51, so we're going to take 51 and then divide it by the total of 115 in that column to give us 0.4434. And then the non-smokers, we see that the total in that age group that are dead is 40, and we're going to divide that by the total in that column, which is 123, to give us 0.3252. Okay, next we'll look at the next age group, which is 65 to 74. So the amount of smokers in that age group who are dead is 29. We're dividing it by the total, in that column, which is 37, which gives us 0.7837. Okay, next we want to find out what is the number of that age group that are non-smokers that are dead, and we can see that that represents 102. So we're going to take that number of 102 and we're going to divide it by the total in that column, which is 131, to give us 0.7786. Okay, the last. Okay, we're going to look at the last age group, which is 75 or older, of smokers who were dead, which are 13. So we have 13 divided by the total in that column, which is 13. And 13 divided by 13 gives us 1. And then last, the non-smokers of that age group of 75 or older that were dead are 66. And then we're going to divide it by the total of 66 to give us 1.000. Okay, now before we enter our answers, we need to convert this to 3 decimal places. So that's why we're going to 4 decimal places. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to round this to 3 decimal places. So we're going to get 0.053, 0.032, which we already have those answers, 0.024, 0.032, 0.126, 0.066, 0.203, 0.154, 0.443, 0.325, 0.784, 0.779, 1.000, and 1.000. Okay, so therefore we're going to enter in those information into our data set here, and that gives us the result of part C. Now the last part of this question wants us to draw a bar graph of the conditional distribution from part C. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and click on the viewing table, and then we're going to open up this part here in StatCrunch. So we're going to open up this part in StatCrunch. Okay, so now we're going to have to create our own data with the data we just filled it in order for us to create a bar graph. And so all we need to do is we're going to create 2 new columns. The first column is going to be smoker, and the next column is going to be non-smoker. Okay, now for the age group of 18 to 24, we saw that we had 0.053, 0.024, and so on. So that means we're going to list this number. So 0.053, 0.024, 0.126, 203, 0.443, 0.784, and then 1. And then we're also going to do the same thing for non-smoker. So we have 0.032, 0.032, 0.066, 0.154, 0.325, 0.779, and then 1. So we're going to use these 2 columns with this column is here to generate our bar graph so that we can make sure that it's going to look like one of these options here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then open up our StatCrunch. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and select graph, and then we're going to go to chart, and we're going to select columns. Okay, now the columns that we want are going to be the smoker and non-smoker because that's what we just filled in. And we want the row labels to be with the age group. Okay, and then we want everything to be worksheet. We want to make sure it's vertical bars that are split. Okay, and we know that the y-axis is the relative frequency, just so that we can make sure that we have the correct information here. Okay, so let's go ahead and compute, and then we're going to compare our bar graphs with our possibilities. Okay, so if we take a look at C, and then compare with our graph with StatCrunch, okay, we can see that it doesn't match because already these two for our graph are not the same, where for part A it's showing that these are the same for 18 to 24. So we can stop there, and then over here likewise we can see that it's the same here for this one. So it's pretty close here, and it's there, and then we can see that it might match here, same thing here. And then if we look at the next age group, from 55 to 64, and then over here at 65 to 74, we can see that it's a lot different in our part B option. So now if we look at part C, part B matches our graph perfectly there. So we can see that we get the same graph here for those groups, and then from 54, 65 to 74, and then 75 or older. So therefore we would then say that C represents our graph. And then it says state the appropriate conclusion and choose the correct answer below. Well, it says there that in almost all age groups, smokers had a higher death rate than non-smokers because blue represent the smokers.